And also, you get a lot of interrupting hugs.
Kind of interrupting us to show that that's kind of us.
Sakib bhai said that you guys sound like almost Pink Floyd. So,
So I met Arafat Kazi when I was 18 years old, and we went to university together. And he was doing this. So I had long hair and a Black Sabbath shirt, and I looked at him and I said, "Okay." And then he went like this, and we have drum battles, on the desk. And then we finally met each other because he was talking to a woman and asking her on a date, and she said, "Oh, what kind of music do you love?" And he said, "Oh, I love like metal and Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden and bands like that." So I said, "Oh, I also love that kind of music. I'm Jason. Nice to meet you." And he said, "Oh, hello, I'm Arafat. Great to meet you." And the woman walked away, and I don't think he got her number, but we became friends for life. And I would go to his house. His mother and father moved to Boston, where I lived, and my parents were not with me at the time. So when it was time for meals or things, I'd go over to their place, and she cooked me like dal bhat and shak. I was vegetarian, so his mother and his father said, you can call us Abu and Amu, and you're our son now. So Arafat started playing me bands like Cryptic Fate and Feedback and James and LRD, a lot of bands I'm probably forgetting, but Azam Khan. So he gave me a CD copy of Shreshtam by Cryptic Fate. And I put on that first song, with the drum fill and it just got stuck in my head. And
that's like one of the best album in our heavy metal scene. I guess you know that.
Yes.
That was big hit.
Yep. And I was a teenage metalhead. I said, "This is great. I love it." I don't really understand the language, but I'm vibing with the music. And that's how we got started. And I came to Bangladesh in 2007 and got to jam with him and Imran and the Attempted Man, or I guess the Watson brothers at the time.
Yeah,
And, I was friends with Arafat while they were writing the songs for Oho, and he would send me the songs and things like that. So I really feel like I got, a lot of privilege in learning about the Bangladeshi music scene from Arafat. And then we visited Puno Bai and Arnab and a bunch of great musicians, Shuman Bai as well. So
that's right.
Yep.
So which band you love the most?
I can't say who I love the most. I mean, Gunabai's style is kind of like mine. We're kind of laid back in the groove. I'm not as flashy as Shuman Bai, but I do like to, slap or take a solo. And of course, Pablo Bai has been a really big influence on me. We got to play together a few times in the past few years. And I've learned a lot from his style, and I think he's incorporated some things from my style. So that's the best part about being a musician. It's if you ask me who's the best is being able to learn and, teach with other people and get to jam with musicians and just listen to each other and then internalize that in your flow. And that's how we grow as musicians. I mean, listening to each other and leaving space in the music. The other day at practice, we were very loud, and Arafat just said, "Hey, wait, we all have to turn down like 60%, and then we can hear each other," because I was playing with Otip and Pitomba from Own and Arafat, and as a band, like we had never really played together. I played with them in Hata and the Attempted Band a little bit, but this was our first time jamming together. So yeah, at first we were kind of a mess, and then Arafat said, "Let's keep the volume down, first listen to each other, get the vibe." So, sometimes that can be challenging at first, but music is a universal language, right? And it's a little different. I teach music in Boston, and I have to learn all this stuff from both Western music theory, but there's a lot of things that come from like Hindustani classical music or Baul music with the ektana, where the notes are like microtones and what's it called, amak, where you slide between the notes, like, and my singing teacher in Boston says, "No, don't slide off the notes." But here, sliding up around the notes is a way to like express yourself musically. So that's one of the challenges I faced as kind of going back to Boston and saying, like, well, what I'm being taught and being told to teach in the schools is kind of a narrow view of the world. So that's part of why I'm bringing a lot of Bangladeshi students back to the schools. I have 300 students every week, like small kids.
Oh, there's lots of
yeah, so they'll get
students.
to explore like some hand drums and ekta and some homework and told and things. So I think the challenge is communication because that's in any relationship, communication is the key.
Yes,
And once
and I guess all of you guys bonding as are very good. Like all my interpret members, like Imran and Zakir and other members, you guys have good communication and the
yes,
bonding.
that definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you have any other project in Boston?
In Boston, yes.
Could you please mention some, your projects?
So I work with Arafat with in a band called Cosmic Cat. We just started out, and we have we're recording our original soon. We've had a few shows, and we're gonna continue having shows. And I also work with a couple of friends of mine who play. My friend Marcia, she plays a gong and like singing bowls, like very ambient music, and my friend Malou plays hand percussion, and I play the bass. And it's a very different vibe from the rock music, but we play music for like meditation and things like that. So that's something I started to get into. And of course, playing in the school with the kids, we have like the band of middle schoolers who perform on stage, and we have maybe 6 or 7 students who are really good musicians, and I get to perform with them. So I'm very lucky I have a lot of musical opportunities that I can squeeze in my busy life.
Sir?
Oh, okay. Well, great. So I grew up as a metalhead, first of all. And, I love Metallica and also alternative music like Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Nine Inch Nails, Hole, and then I got into like more extreme metal. So I think especially in the American scene. I played in a metal band and we practiced 3 times a week and we were really tight. And then later I got into things like funk and jazz. I started jamming with some musicians in a warehouse where I used to work, and they had like an underground funk club, and I was playing like really fast and metal stuff. And the drummer, I'll never forget, he said, "Man, like you're really good, but you're playing too many notes. So listen to the groove from some leave some space." So that's when I started saying, okay, like I can play around with different styles, and metal as a music is very on the one. It's like right, and funk is also on the one, but it's different. And so I used many different styles in order to like build what I call my personal style. And my personal style is always changing, right? As I play with different musicians, it's going to change. So growing up, I was also able to see a lot of concerts in my hometown,
Discovering new genres and music.
Boston. Yeah, and there was like a hardcore metalcore scene, like bands like Converge and Cave In and ISIS the band, and Shadows Fall, Every Time I Die. Like I think some of those bands got popular worldwide, but that scene, like bands really took care of each other. Like when they went out on the road, they would help each other out, borrow equipment from each other, and that kind of thing. So seeing that kind of like DIY, like do it yourself scene, which I know in Dhaka, like a lot of the scene has to be DIY because there's not a lot of support for band music. So like people have to help each other out, sponsor shows together, and like share gear and that kind of stuff. So I think that's growing up in that scene in Boston kind of prepared me for sometimes the band's gonna break down, it's gonna be 2 hours late, or you're gonna have a traffic jam, and like that's just like the punks, we can make a mark. So I think that's part of it. And then how has Bangladeshi music influenced me? So when I recorded Agun Emoshani, the album with the Attempted Band, I listened to feedback, like all the time. You said Sekendo from feedback, the bass player, and some of the lines in what is it song, California Fish Fish, and a couple of other songs. I kind of quoted those lines because the album was set in the 1990s where people were listening to feedback and
Yeah, the late 80s and 90s.
yeah, so I would listen to those musicians and say like, how can I incorporate some of that feeling and some of that sonic texture, because I'm an American and I'm playing on an album that has a story behind it. The story is about Dhaka, and I'm being very specific to Bangladesh. So I wouldn't want to just come in and say, I'm just going to play whatever. I wanted to get a background of like how the streets and the music might have sounded back when the story was happening. So
I'm wearing the t-shirt that you're talking about.
it was a really great opportunity to play on that album, and I definitely, put my heart and soul into it because this guy, Arafat, had told me stories from down the knee in the '90s about the Mustangs and the gangs and watching MacGyver every Wednesday night and things. So I was able to like have those stories in my head very well, and also music. Like the beat here and the rhythm of the streets and that is very different. There's the constant beating and buzz of the streets where I live, it's a lot quieter. So whenever I'm here, I kind of listen to the rhythm of the streets, listen to the way people are talking, the cadence, and people like CMG, CMG, or Unishmash, that kind of thing. And like that's in Boston, you don't hear like street vendors yelling out like that and things, and so it makes a different soundscape to where you are. And Arafat tells me whenever we come to Bangladesh, our playing changes a little because we're internalizing the sounds of the streets and the nature and whatever, because there's music everywhere, and that's coming into our playing. And that so on, an intentional level, when I listen to different music from different cultures, that comes into my playing, but also on like an unconscious level when I'm walking around and just hearing sounds. I might not even remember where I heard something, but then I'll start playing that rhythm. So it works on a lot of levels. It's really beautiful.
So what's your favorite composition from Agun Moshumi?
What's my favorite composition
From Agun Moshumi?
Brish Tiro Party, I'd have to say, and DPG of those two songs that are back to back.
I love Moshumi.
Emotion is
That's my favorite.
that's like that song is like almost perfection.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing is perfection, but yeah, that one's like, and the other two are my personal favorite because of like the stories you have, and you started funky and I love music.
Yes,
Yeah. So as a bassist, some of my main influences starting off in life were Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath, and Cliff Burton, because they both played like very fast finger style, but they had such great groove. Like especially Geezer Butler comes from like a blues jazz background, so his groove in pocket it's so good. And then a little later, Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, so metal basses. Those were like my kind of first influences growing up, and then later I got into bassists like Victor Wooten, who's a jazz bassist, and he's really good at improvising. And he'll say things like, if you play a wrong note, slide it up and make it a right note. There's nothing wrong with playing what he calls like just a repetitive musical phrase over and over again. It doesn't have to be complicated as long as it gets you in the groove. So who else? Michelle DiGicello is a great bass player. And she played on a song with John Mellencamp called Wild Night and I heard that when I was like a teenager. It's like, whoa, she was like slapping and popping and stuff in all these crazy ways. And I hadn't like heard anything like that from a bass before. And who else? Lately, I've been listening to like using a key bass with flat bottom strings to get a more like funky sound. Bootsy Collins. That's what I was thinking of. Bootsy Collins is my other big influence as a bass player. And he played for James Brown. He played for George Clinton from the Funkadelic. And he used like wah pedals and all different effects to get to like wah 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 wah, like that really funky tone sound. And it was very laid back in his playing, but also very technical. So I would have to say those are some of my big influences.
Any
And
song?
of course, Chucky.
Oh, wow.
Because his bass tone is monstrous.
Okay. Okay. Sakib bhai said that you guys sound like almost Pink Floyd. So tell something about this.
Chucky Bhai, I know, has been a huge influence on Arafat, and almost everything he does, he's trying to get his approval. And I think he might have finally got it after almost, like 25 years of, of being around him. But no, like, I've been lucky also to just played with a lot of great bassists. Jacob Pastorius is another great bassist. He plays the fretless bass. Tony Lennon, it does a lot of experimental stuff. He played with Kingdoms and did a lot of fretless things and microtones and effects. So yeah, and I keep discovering new bassists. There's a bassist named Mohini Day, and I don't know if she's lives in India, but she's an Indian bassist.
Yeah,
She's, like,
she did
really
some
effective.
project in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
Dan Bangla.
Yeah, and she's amazing. Of course, Pablo Baek from Rafa and Coke Studio and things. So
Have you listened to Noimas yet?
yes,
You loved it?
I love it. It has like great melody. It's really heavy. It has some of the like vocal parts remind me a little of like Alice in Chains when Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell did harmonies, and then I love how they bring back like some of the old themes from Tresco, and some of the riffs are similar. But yeah, I really enjoyed that album. But you know, it was on my playlist for a week, a little after it came out, and it's really heavy when it needs to be. It's really melodic. It's a great album.
Do you write songs?
Apromon.
Oh, okay,
Apromon.
Apromon.
Yeah.
That's the same song.
Yeah.
So do you write for lyrics or songs, anything?
Yes. I've written some of the songs on the attempted band album that's coming out next. I wrote a couple of those songs. And then with the projects we work on in Boston, I've written some songs over the years. And, you know, not a lot. I I don't do a lot of songwriting like from scratch, but I've collaborated with people to write songs and have always enjoyed it. I always enjoy coming up with bass parts and chord progressions and things. And sometimes like I'll write a song. One of the songs we're using for the next attempted band album, I wrote it like 12, 13 years ago, maybe longer. And I always had it in my head. I knew how to play it on guitar. I had the melody, but I never found a place where it would fit. Right. So I never produced it. And then we were putting up this album that it's like kind of experimental. So I said, oh, I could use this song. So you never know. Like, you know, I've talked to a lot of other songwriters who it's the same thing. They'll have an idea for years and years, and then the perfect time comes for it. And then sometimes you write a song in like one day. Like we have a band in Boston. I mentioned the Cosmic Cat, and one of the songs just like came right out of the jam. We were jamming, and the singer started improvising over it. It sounded great, and we turned it into a song. So there's so many different ways to get your musical inspiration.
Are you a reader? Do you read books or more like you love films?
So I do love to read. Sadly, I haven't read a lot of books lately because I've been studying. I went back to school because I didn't start out as a teacher. I used to work for an NGO and drive a truck and distribute fruits and vegetables and things. So teaching is my second career. So I've had to go back and take classes and learn more about music and music theory, and also take education classes. But lately, I love to read an author named Octavia Butler. She has a series called The Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, and it's about like the futuristic world, not too far in the future, where like climate change has really affected people and people are struggling, and you know it's kind of a dystopian book, but also it talks a lot about community and how people can come together and help each other in times of crisis. So there's that. Growing up, I love to read like Roald Dahl, and an author called Daniel Drinkwater, you know. And as I got older, I really got into poetry, like Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, Wordsworth, Shakespeare, and things like that. I studied a lot of poetry in school and have always liked writing songs and reading poems because, you know, that songs and poetry are very similar. But yeah, I also love reading nonfiction, like history things. I'm all very interested in history and like philosophy and things, and why people do what they do or how societies come together and things like that. But I do need to read many more books. It's something I've kind of been lacking lately. But
So do you get any idea from there and it turn into a song or any composition? Like, do you pick ideas from like in novels and poetry and other things?
I think when I was younger, a lot more, yes, and like now, that's a good question. It would be something to to think about, where like it's a story and evoke a feeling, because I know a lot of bands do have songs that have to do with like legends or different fictional stories. So yeah, that's something I could look to for influence. But I think again, it's something that influences me on more of an unconscious level. The sounds of the street, the the cadence of the poem, or like the flowery language of the poem. I might use a similar phrase without even thinking about it, because it's been in my head. So I think it does influence me in that way, of course. All right. What I enjoy most is being in the groove, and because I also love to play drums. I love rhythm instruments. So, and I love playing guitar and piano. And as a bass player, it's kind of like you get all of those things. You get to groove and make a rhythm. You can also like play a melody on the bass. You can move the bass line around to like be in the pocket, or a little behind the beat, a little in front of the beat. And as a guitar player, like, you can be a little more free with soloing and improvising, because the bass and drums are holding things down, So I like being part of that foundation. And even doing things in life, like when I worked at an NGO, I like really building things from the ground up, or teaching and planning lessons and structuring things. So it makes sense as, a bassist, I'm part of that musical foundation. What influences me to keep going is that I really enjoy it. It brings me peace and joy and happiness, and life can be crazy. There's a lot of craziness in the world. There's a lot of tragedy in the world, and music is a way that we can like express ourselves, and it's like a very safe way to get through some of our feelings, right? So I'll always have that part of music, and of course just making music with people and meeting new friends and getting to know people through music is something that all my life there are a lot of people I never would have met if I didn't play music with them. But then it turns out that we become friends, or even if we don't, I might learn something from them that I'll remember for the rest of my life. So there's that, and the fact that like people actually want to listen to the music we create is a really beautiful thing, and I'm very grateful for that. That people, because when I hear the songs that we write, it makes me really happy. I want to dance, I want to groove, and the fact that people can share in that is a really beautiful thing that I'm very grateful. Um, ooh, it was probably, well, on guitar, it was Come As You Are by Nirvana, which I think is like almost everyone's first song. On bass, it might have been Rage Against the Machine song, like Know Your Enemy, or it might have been Higher Ground by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Stevie Wonder wrote the song, but a very famous bass line was on the radio all the time when I was a kid. So I think probably one of those.
Okay, and which was very toughest or hardest for you to learn or
On
pick up with?
bass, there's a song by the band Yes called "Close to the Edge," and it's like a 17-minute epic prog song. And I learned that song when I was in my 20s, and that was probably the hardest song I ever learned, because it was really long, it was really technical, there were a lot of different moving parts. And yeah, as far as songs I've learned, that might be the hardest.
Music. Like, I'm very big fan of British music.
Okay, I like a lot of British music, but I mean, it, I don't. Again, it's like hard to choose, because I love blues and jazz and funk, and a lot of blues and jazz and funk music came from America, and still, like, there's British blues, jazz, and funk, of course, but like the legends and the jazz and funk scene, like Louis Armstrong, Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, came from America. And as far as rock music, like Black Sabbath is one of my favorite bands ever. Introduced me to metal, so Iron Maiden, the band, and bands like the Beatles, of course, like the Beatles, like you amazing songwriters. I went through a phase in my life where I just listened to all their music and absorbed everything I could. So I can see both. And I guess I listen to more American music these days, and also I'm a big fan of hip hop too. So there's some British hip hop and grind and stuff, but more the hip hop scenes in America. So I probably listen to more American music, but it was equally influenced by the British music that I listen to in particular. Okay, so the first time I saw a bass guitar, I grew up in Boston in the United States, and I worked with my auntie. I was 14 years old, and she had a sweater shop where she sold clothes, and she lived in a part of Boston called the North End. It's like downtown. So I was 14 years old, and she took me to a jazz club, and she had to sit on one side because she was drinking alcohol and the bar was serving alcohol. I had to sit on the other side that was closed and look at the band. But I remember there was a bass player playing a 5-string green Warwick bass. It was beautiful, and we was slapping and moving around and had great technique. So afterward, I told my auntie, I really like that bass player, and she said, let's go talk to him. So she took me over. This my auntie was really cool. Rest in peace, Pat. She passed away a few years ago, but so I was jamming to this jazz bass player in a club. She took me over to meet him, and I was very shy back then. And he shook my hand. He said, you could do this too, and that's all it took was another musician saying, if you love it, if you want to pick up an instrument, if you have the desire, then go ahead and do it. And over the years, I've learned from hundreds and hundreds of people. I've played music with like all different styles, like gospel music, metal music, bangla rock, folk music, hip hop, like everything. And everything I've learned, I've put into my style and my life. So I'm very grateful for that. So it was my most memorable moment was in 2007. I got to play with Imran and Arafat from the Watson Brothers, and also I think their friend Saki was on vocals at the time. So I got to sit on that jam with them way back in 2007, and that was the first time I had come to Bangladesh and you know really met a lot of people from the music scene. So that was very memorable. The practice space was in this like whole high-rise building. There were all these exposed concrete bars, and we walked through, all these little back alleys and got there. It was just a lot of fun. And then I started working for an NGO and was really devoted to that for 15 years. So I couldn't come back to Bangladesh. And when I finally did, we got together and played at the Liberation War Museum with Owned and with Hatad, of course, Conclusion, Tashfi, and a Rector rock band. And that was my first time like playing a larger show in Bangladesh. It was really great. The energy of the crowd's beautiful. All of the bands had collaborated together to make Hot Tots, so we had like kind of the family energy going. And afterwards, we had a big party where I put up a big Italian feast, and we had just a jam session in Zakir Bai's living room where just like 10 different people with like acoustic guitars hanging out and singing. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of. So that was a great moment. Also, I played a show with some younger kids. Do you know Anirban?
Sorry.
Anirban, yeah, sorry, I'm not pronouncing it right. Anirban, he sang on the song Summer with that monsoon. And
I guess I don't know about them that much.
okay, he's like a younger kid. He's a great
Okay.
guitarist and singer though. And I played with um, I think the Crooked Teeth or Naked, one of those bands, and who else? Bobo, Kazizani, like like some of the younger kids in the music scene. Pronto, Kirto, Pronto, Vladimir Road. So a lot of the younger kids
Yeah.
are like have some really great musical ideas, and I got to hang out with a lot of them and jam, and so that was also memorable to see like what the up and coming scene is like. There's a lot. I think there's a lot more like indie rock into it. It's like bands like Eddie Never Grew or Cookie State Drive, stuff like that. So it's been cool to cool. So Tana David Destroyer, like those indie bands that are bringing like a fresh sound to the underground. It's cool to like hang up in that scene too. Um, Caffeine and vitamins and going for long walks and riding in CNGs. I don't know. That's the question. I try to get enough sleep. I'm kind of an introvert myself. I was never like someone who like around a lot of people, but I also like when I'm in big groups, I like to kind of I can take on the role of a spokesperson or especially as a teacher, something I have to do every day. So I make sure that I get enough rest. I make sure I get enough music time in, and make sure that I plan things. So my beautiful partner Swati taught me something called um, backward design planning, where you block like your day and say, I'm going to do this for 3 hours, do this for 3 hours, things like that. So, I've learned some things after growing older and, spending a lot of time messing around, which is fine. But now that I have a lot more responsibilities, I do have to plan things a little better and make sure I'm not in my 20s anymore. I can't stay out all night, that type of thing. But it's also great to be in a place in Dhaka where like you can walk down the street and get great fresh food and go to the market or science and get all these instruments like that in food. So it's being in Dhaka, everything has a real sense of immediacy and I really love that.
And also, you get a lot of interrupting hugs.
Sound of interrupting hugs to show that that's kind of us.
So does Boston knows for any like Seattle knows for like very ground city?
Yes,
And which is famous for Boston? Like any genres?
So Boston there haven't been a lot of like scenes that are very famous in Boston traditionally, but the hardcore and metalcore scene in the 90s, 2000s, like Converge, Shadows Fall, Cave-In, ISIS, like Killswitch Engage, like Hatebreed, like those bands came from the Boston area. And I think I was kind of surprised that like people here knew the Converge was right because they're a band I grew up seeing in like little clubs and things. Boston also has Aerosmith, The Cars, and then those are Boston bands. And the Pixies are also Boston. Yeah. So or at least some of the Pixies are from Boston. So yeah, there's always been like a pretty strong rock scene in Boston. And as far as like hip hop goes, not really a big hip hop scene. Like Guru and NOG, who worked with Gangstar and DJ Premier, from Boston. But and yeah, like this, our symphony is very famous, like classical music, the conductors and orchestras are very famous. But as far as the style of music that Boston's known for, I grew up in the punk hardcore metal scene in Boston, so I know that's mostly what I know of those bands.
So would you like to say something for your Bangladeshi fans or those who loves you? Anything
Oh,
you can say?
Thank you. And it's been a really great journey to like hear music from Bangladesh for 15, 20 years ago and kind of always have it in my conscience. And then because I was adopted as part of our family, like feeling a real sense of belonging and love. And when I came here this week, Muna Manda said to me, I said, I really love being part of the music scene here. And he said, well, it's not just the scene, you're part of the family, and all the musicians look at each other. It's like, even we might have our disputes and we're creative, right? So we're artists, we're going to have temperaments, we're going to yell at each other or whatever and disagree on things. But at the end of the day, you know, being a musician and playing with other musicians makes you family. So I love being part of the family. And, I'm also here for Lavushka and the Tamari and the Ponir, of course. And, love just being here and enjoying the sights and sounds. And I know, I'm very privileged. I can go back to America and, live in America and live a very different life. But the hospitality of Bangladesh and the way that people just like welcome everyone with open arms and say, come listen to the music, eat the food, enjoy, just like lose yourself in all of this. That's a really beautiful thing that I think more people from the States or Europe, I think more people should experience that because there's you see there's like cultural divides, or we're told there's all these cultural divides in our world. But at the end of the day, like if
We are all human beings.
yeah, if I can show up here and pick up a bass and like jam with the song where I barely understand the words, or and maybe don't even know some of the people, but we can just bond over that. There's certainly hope for people coming together. and being able to bond through art and music. And so that's the best thing about being here, you know, being embraced as part of the family. I appreciate you.
So do you know my content, or have you watched any content? Like, do you know me like Muziek Gossips?
I follow you on Instagram, and I heard your interview with Arafat, and I've heard when you post songs from different artists. Like, but to be completely honest, I haven't listened to any of the other interviews yet, and it's because like the past like year I've been teaching full time, like 40, 50 hours a week working at school and then in classes during the evening and also running all these songs and trying to pick up. So I just don't have a lot of time to like be on social media and like get in depth with things, but I will definitely.
So you can say the audience who loves you can subscribe my channel. Please.
Yes, please subscribe to Music and Gossips. It's on Instagram, on Facebook as well, but
Okay.
and I'm a subscriber and I'll check out a lot more.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for the time.
Of course. Thank you.
Nice to have you.
It was great to be here. Like, share, subscribe, music. Love.